Hey guys, what's up? Rob Shoecraft here from 3 Storm Fitness, and I'm going to talk to you today about EDT, Charles Staley's EDT, or Escalating Density Training. I gotta think, well, first of all, Dustin, I'm pretty much making this video just so you can admire my wallpaper. You always comment on it. My dining room wallpaper. Yeah, I was thinking about shooting this video down in the barn, but it's raining outside and it's too noisy down there on the tin roof and everything. So shooting it in the dining room, I don't really need to show you anything. I'm just going to talk about it. It's a bit of a review, just kind of my experiences with it. And I got to thank Marty, one of my viewers of this channel who comments quite a bit. Marty, I did a video a little while ago on a workout I made where you're just trying to get, I call it like the high score workout or something like that, where you're going back and forth between deadlifts and bench presses and adding weight every single set for 20 minutes. It's just kind of like a stupid challenge yourself type workout. And he said, oh, that kind of reminds me of EDT. And to be honest with you, I had never heard of EDT. And unfortunately, I haven't heard of every program. I'd like to. I like geeking out on different programs, even sometimes when it's not necessary. But that's my own problem. It's a side effect of being a geek. But I went and checked it out, and it looked pretty cool to me. And so I ran myself through it for a month. Basically, let me just give a brief overview of what it is. There's lots of information out there on it. It's been out for at least. I think he made a T-Nation article, Charles Staley, back in, I don't know, 07 or something. It's been a thing for a while, and if I had to guess, he probably based it on somebody else's training. That's kind of how it all works, and that's cool. But basically, you pick, I believe that the traditional template is you pick a 10 rep max, or you determine your 10 rep max in 12 different exercises, 12 different compound exercises. So we're not talking about, bicep curls and leg curls and leg extensions and that sort of thing. We're talking about big compound movements like back squats, front squats, Zercher squats, trap bar deadlifts, straight bar deadlifts, snatch grip deadlifts, bench press, barbell bench press, incline bench press, dumbbell bench press, pull-ups, bent over rows, pin lay rows. You get the point. Big compound movements that involve a lot of muscles at once. So anyways, you pick 12 different exercises. It's really meant to be a 3-day program. I'll talk about some adaptations I made in a second. But and by the way, just as a general rule of thumb, just like in diet, I recommend picking the basically following the program to a T first to make sure it works for you as advertised. Otherwise, if you're just making a bunch of changes to it the first time you do it, you're not really doing the program anymore. Anyways, that's just kind of a little one-off thing. So I made adaptations to it after I did it myself for some people who needed changes because of schedules and things like that. But anyways, you pick those exercises. Then on day one, you do a superset, two 15-minute supersets. With usually it's going to be like a agonist lift. I won't get into the details too much, but you're not doing like a compound superset where you're working the same muscle group back to back. You're doing a superset where you would work muscles with a antagonist-agonist relationship, where you're like a push and a pull would be an example. Or you could do upper body, lower body. So a classic example would be a bench press and then weighted pull-up. Or you could pair squats with rows. You kind of get the point there. So you pick your 10 rep max, and you can, there's different adjustments, but 10 rep max is kind of the original program. You determine that you either test it specifically, or you kind of take your best guess based on some. There's a million different charts out there that'll tell you that, and they're usually pretty accurate depending on the person. But you set the clock for 15 minutes, and you go back and forth at your 10 rep max in each of those two lifts as many times as possible, with up to 5 reps per set. So your 10 rep max up to 5 reps per set, and you keep going back and forth until, and as you go, you might see, very, very likely, you'll see that, okay, you can no longer, maybe after the 5th set, you can no longer hit 5. So you maybe drop down to 4 or 3 or 2 or 1. It just kind of, it depends on a number of things. And you add reps to it, you add weight to it over the course of however long you're running the cycle, when you hit 20% of your total volume. So if you, if you hit, gosh, I'm gonna have to do some math here. If you hit let's say 40 reps the first day, the first week, but then you hit 49 the next week, I think that'd be 20%. Then the following week, you would add 5 to 10 pounds to the bar, depending on what you're doing. Again, I'm not getting into all the details because there's tons of information out there, but, and you do that for 12 different exercises. You pair them up, so basically would be 6 different supersets throughout the week. So two supersets on two supersets on day 1, 15 minutes, 2 supersets on day 2, 2 supersets on day 3, with rest in between each day, of course. So the reason I did it, first of all, again, I just like to. Part of my progress is actually probably stifled from changing, from doing so many different programs, but I won't get into that. That's another video. I just really like to try different training techniques and pass them on to my clients if I think they're worth anything. So I thought of a couple clients who I thought would benefit from this, and I'll tell you why. It's timed. If you haven't messed around with timed training under against a clock, I'm a big fan of it as a tool for a couple different reasons. One, if you're training alone, it's kind of a nice external motivator. If you don't have a trainer, or you don't have a training partner with you, kind of being like, come on, dude, you got to do this last set. It's nice that it doesn't seem like much, but you're looking at that clock and you say, you know what, there's a minute and a half left on that thing. Or if you didn't have that minute and a half, maybe you were just kind of going on some semi-arbitrary set rep scheme, which I very rarely recommend doing. There's time and a place for that, but anyways, it's good to have a planned progression in mind, stick to it as much as possible, just generally speaking. But when you look at that minute and a half and you think, I could fit that last set in, it kind of pushes you. So it's great as a motivator. Another reason, though, is it changes your psyche a little bit, at least for some people. Some people, they get up, I guess these would be the more dopamine dominant neurotransmitter profile type folks. They just always want to max out. They get up to the bar, they're doing nose torque and screaming and listening to some sort of, I don't know what the kids are listening to these days, but something to psych themselves up. And you all know those guys, and some of those guys are total douchebags, and others are setting world records across the board, But anyways, I'm not one of those people, and these clients who I use this training method with aren't necessarily these people either. I'm not saying you can't, I'm not saying this isn't for you if you are more of a kind of a, I don't know, less aggressive lifter, but for those who get up to the bar and they think, okay, I gotta get this, and they psych themselves out, and then their technique gets crap, and they miss the reps that they would have gotten had they not been so out of place. Well, this is there's all sorts of breathing techniques and visualization strategies and things to combat that sort of thing. But what I found is that having a time set where you're not really thinking, you're just going, you just keep going, and you're stacking that volume in a very short amount of time, again, hence the escalating density. And, generally speaking, volume is one of the biggest predictors. Volume when you're factoring for weight as well. One of the biggest predictors of not only strength but muscle gains as well. And when you're dealing with that 10 rep max as originally prescribed by Charles Staley, you know, you're dealing with mainly hypertrophy goals. Somebody who's relatively untrained will probably see some significant benefits in strength as well. Of course, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this for somebody who's just a total novice. It may be too much. We'll talk about that a little bit. Again, it's all kind of relative. You got to sort of figure things out. It just might not be necessary to do something like that. This is more like, I see this as like a plateau busting tool. So, you know, one of my clients in particular, he's like, man, after a couple of weeks, he's like, I really like this. Like, I feel like all I need to do is just work. And I don't have to think about the next set. I just do it. And that was exactly what I was hoping for. And sure enough, by the end of 4 weeks, he saw 15 to 20% gains in his I guess you could call it overall strength. Basically, when we retested his 10 rep maxes, he was up 15 to 20% across the board. It worked really well for him. So in general, I really think it's great for somebody who's just looking for another way to, just kind of a way to give their brain a break. On the flip side though, it can sort of work against you because it's a lot of volume in a short amount of time. We're talking, let's say it's not uncommon to hit 50 reps at your 10 rep max in a 15-minute period per lift, okay? So to put that in perspective, as far as just raw numbers are concerned, that's like 5 sets of 10 at your 10 RM in 15 minutes. It's not exactly like that because, again, you're taking these little breaks in between, but if you just look at the numbers, it's a lot of reps, a lot of relatively heavy reps in a short amount of time. So you almost will certainly get to the point where you are now you're psyching yourself out because you're not hitting the numbers that you were before. You can't just keep going that way forever. You're not going to just start hitting 95 reps or whatever, which again is why you add weight. But like anything, the progression is going to eventually start to taper off, and then you're back to where you were. So a couple different ways to handle that. One, go back to the way you were training or pick another kind of program or template. That's what we ended up doing. Or two, pick a whole different set of lifts. Or three, switch from the 10 RM, maybe pick a different goal, 10 RM to a 6 RM. So in that case, you'd be going, and I did this myself, you'd be going 3 reps per set rather than the 5 in the same exact fashion. So but you just use it at your 6 rep max. So now you're getting more strength goals and hypertrophy as well. If you really wanted to, I've heard of people, I haven't done this myself, but I've heard of people going with a 3 RM and doing basically heavy doubles and singles. You could combine the two so that maybe in the first 2 sets you do maybe the first superset you do 15 minutes of a 6 RM, but then in the second set you could do 10 RM in exercises that will kind of help strengthen your weaknesses from your first lift. So 6 RM, it could be let's say it's a let's say 6 RM is a incline bench, and you're finding that you're having trouble with the lockout. You could do your second superset, part of that, or later in the week, whatever, a 10 RM of like closed grip bench or closed grip Swiss bar or something that's going to like really hit the triceps, floor press, board presses, things like that. If you are, maybe weak in box squat, you could do RDLs for a 10 RM. So you can stack it intelligently and do a lot of neat things with it, and it works really well. So I'm a big fan of it. There's a couple of talking points I wanted to bring up. I'm trying to remember what the heck they were. I think we've covered most of the pros and the cons, and really they're just like most programs, it's just what you make of it. Most programs work pretty well as long as you're using them appropriately and not just beating them to death and expecting magic to always happen from them. But again, you got to watch out, because you will. It's hard. You will eventually probably run yourself into the dirt. So I just an opinion, I would use this in like a 4-week training cycle. Again, if you're stuck at a plateau or something, or you just want something fresh. So I highly recommend it. EDT, Charles Staley, again, I believe is the creator, the original creator of it. Thanks again, Marty, for bringing it up. And yeah, try it out. Let me know what you think. If you've had success with it or if you hated it. Yeah, let me know other programs like it if you know. I'm sure there's a million of them. I could talk a lot. I could talk a long time about using what's his Jim Smith. He's got a program out there, and it's a premium program. Like you have to pay. It's part of the site, so I don't want to give too much away. But basically, he uses factors of EDT basically for like isolation type exercises to supplement like an undulating periodization for his like main lifts. So he's kind of like borrowing from it and plugging that in for like more like accessory kind of work. So there's a million different ways to skin it. But if you're going to try it out, just try it out as written. And that's what I was going to say. So with this, with my buddy slash client, been training with him for a long time now, so we're buddies. He couldn't do, for whatever reason, we couldn't do the 3 days of just full 10 RM across the board like that. So I had one day that was just almost like like at Westside they call like repetitive effort, or like a repetition day, or like a bodybuilding kind of day, where you're doing a lot of isolation type exercises, kind of like what I just said. But he would just do that. So we do like 8 minutes, pick 2 lifts, 8 minutes, go back to back. And it's not quite as, I mean, it's hard work, but it's not quite as just stressful on the nervous system and recovery, etc. So you got to know your client, know yourself, depending on who's training, and you know what you can handle and what you can't. But give it a shot and let me know what you think. And I'm going to end this video because, of course, it's going long. All right, guys. Have a great day. Rob Shoecraft, 3 Storm Fitness. Subscribe to this channel.